On today's episode of the NASM-CPT Podcast with me, Richey, I speak with authors Katy Bowman and Diana Hill about their new book. It's called "I Know I Should Exercise, But," and it's a great title, and it's perfectly gives me the idea that you have some information that I can share with people to help them overcome this particular comment. In this episode, we discuss entertaining the concept of movement and physical activity, not just exercise. We talk about roadblocks, giving yourself grace, and being a bit more psychologically flexible. And we discuss so much more. Those are just a few highlights of the topics that we discussed today. Now, this is a bit longer podcast than I usually do because I get to chat with two people who are at the peak of their game. So stick around and listen to it, even if you have to break it up into those exercise snacks. Well, this will be those listening snacks. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, comment, and leave a 5-star review. Now, here's the episode on motivating your clients to move their bodies.
You're listening to the NASM-CPT Podcast with Richey, winner of the Sharecare Emmy Award for Social Storytelling and the official podcast of the National Academy of Sports Medicine.
Hey, y'all, and welcome to the NASM-CPT Podcast. My name is Richey, and today I want to talk about some... Here's the thing. You're going to get people that are going to talk to you because you're fitness professionals, and they're going to say these words to you. And this may be people that they're not necessarily at the gym. They find out who you are. This happens to me on airplanes, probably more than anywhere else. I'm on an airplane, you get to chatting with somebody, and that person is like, "Oh, what do you do for a living?" And you're like, "Oh," I say, "Well, I'm a personal trainer." And they go, "Oh, is that why you're drinking black coffee? You don't put anything in your coffee." Or, "Oh, are you sure you should be having that roll?" Whatever. Or, "Don't judge me for what I'm eating." And I'm like, "I'm not judging you." And shockingly being judged by anything that I do, because as a personal trainer, people are going to ask you questions. And this comes up all the time. What should I do? What should I know? I should be exercising. I know I should be working out, but, and they're going to give a list of things as to what's in the way, but then they also are going to be like, "And what should I do?" And it doesn't matter what you tell them, because you're not providing a workout for them. You're not providing a program. If you were to say, "Oh, do bicep curls," right? They'll be like, "Oh, okay." That's not going to get them to their goals necessarily. And if they just want a workout, then that's online. That's Chat GPT. That's Gemini. That's it used to be magazines. You go into a magazine, open it up, and any one of those magazines are going to have a workout. It's not a program. It's not catered to you. It's not fitted to you. So you're going to get a lot of questions that don't really have much to do with what your skill set is as a personal trainer. But I follow up with this question because they say, "I know I should exercise, but," and they'll give some reasons. And then I'll say, "Why do you know you should exercise?" And they give their reasons why, and they're all very good. And then I would say, "Well, what exercises do you know?" And some would say, "Oh, you're supposed to run, or you're supposed to do this." And they're going to give a list of supposed tos and a list of shoulds and a list of things. And so what I think is very interesting today is that I'm not answering this question. I have some guests that are with me today. And the guest went ahead and wrote a book about it. And the book is called "I Know I Should Exercise, But," dot, dot, dot. And so with that, I am very excited to have Katy Bowman and Diana Hill on the podcast today with me, because they are the ones who've studied this. They've looked into that, and they have better answers to these questions than I do. So I'm going to welcome both of you to the show, let you introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about yourself. So if maybe we can have Katy go first, and then we will go with Diana, and just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks for having me. My name's Katy Bowman, and I am a biomechanist, which is just a field of kinesiology that studies the impact of physical forces, mechanical forces on our biology. So I have been in the field of kinesiology for almost 30 years now. And I was excited to get beyond levers and pulleys and alignment and form and a lot of the stuff that we do talk about in exercise science to the stuff that we don't talk about too much outside of sports psychology, which is fitness psychology.
I like that very much. Thank you. All right, Anna.
I'm Dr. Diana Hill. I'm a clinical psychologist. I specialize in helping people overcome psychological barriers to whatever it is that they care about. And I specialize in a type of therapy called ACT, or acceptance and commitment training, and also in using wiser efforts in their life. So when we know that we should exercise, or our clients are telling us that they want to exercise, but they can't get over those barriers, sometimes we act in very unwise ways that pushes them to actually be more resistant to exercise. So my specialty is really the psychological influences that we can have in our own life to be wiser, but also support our clients and our the people that we work with in overcoming barriers.
So how did the idea for this book come about, right? Where I know that this is a great question that we as fitness professionals probably get pretty regularly, and maybe in some instances not as much as you would think, right? So people who are coming to us are already seeking us out. We're very rarely trying to find people who are all not necessarily know we should do that, but they're not interested, because most of the times they're already at the gym. We find them at the gym. So we do come across people, and we know that they say things like, "I know I should exercise," but I think it's the greatest title of a book I've ever heard, because we have so many follow-ups to fill in that "but." How did this idea, this concept, come together for both of you?
Well, I have been putting out a lot of my work online for some time, I don't know, 10 or 15 years. And yes, I think that people who already exercise um, are good at somewhat of a habit, but even the most regular exercisers, I think, can often be waylaid by, things that come up in life. And then also, like, there's different ages and stages of life. So what might work for you might not work for you in the future. And so a lot of what I put out is
Mhm.
sort of systems based thinking about the very broad category of movement, and how can we fit in movement into our activities of daily living, not just the box of exercise, right? We've definitely heard a change from exercise every day to sort of move more throughout the day. There was a workout, now there's movement snacks. And so this concept of movement has been getting more and more broad over time. And then I met Diana at one of my workshops, and then invited her onto my podcast because I thought her approach to psychology was very accessible and very stepwise. And so just after some back and forths on our own podcasts, we were talking about writing this book you've already given the title, but to me, the subtitle of the book, 44 Reasons We Don't Move and How to Get Over Them, where someone could
Mm.
look into the individual, like use it actually like on the day that they are experiencing the barrier, or if you're a personal trainer, the day that you hear someone throw the excuse of why they can't exercise, to be able to look at it and be like, oh, here's maybe what's going on. And so Diana really brought that if there's exercise programming, this is the psychological part of the programming. How do we approach psychology with that exercise programming mindset?
We
Ooh.
reached out to our audience and we asked that question: what are the reasons why you don't move? And all these answers, these really specific answers, came flowing in. Everything from, I have physical pain, to there's no sidewalks, to I have 5 kids and no time. And we categorized all their answers into these 7 main categories, things that people really relate to. So categories of: I don't have enough time, it's uncomfortable, I'm embarrassed, body image and shame. Even if you are a mover, you may not be doing some of the exercises or some of the classes or some of the things that you need to do for your physical therapy because you are, because of body image. You don't want to go into a yoga class if you're a larger size person. There's no one larger in your yoga class, right? So we broke it down into all of these sort of larger categories, including environment, that
Yeah.
we even included like poor air quality. I'm right outside of Los Angeles, and there are days when you don't want to go outside and walk because of fires and because of smog. So what do you do? And then I answered all of these reasons from a psychological perspective, which actually was kind of challenging because some of them felt so not psychological, but even things that don't seem psychological are psychological. There are thoughts that you are believing that are getting in the way. There are feelings that you're letting dominate your experience and you haven't tapped into your values. So I answered from a psychological perspective. And then Katy is just a genius at creative ways of moving our bodies in places, in contexts, in situations where you think that no one moves, but actually you can move. So we put those two together, and hopefully people can find an answer to every single reason that they can apply to their own unique little special reason, of why they're not doing X, Y, and Z.
Interesting. So I'm going to have a follow-up question here, because when I was doing my doctoral program, I was focused on attribution theory and attributional retraining. And so one of the things that I find interesting is that a lot of times what we attribute to be the reason for us not exercising is not actually the reason that we don't exercise. And addressing what they believe is the issue is one thing. And so what I did in my program is I said, you as a fitness professional, I want you to tell me all the reasons why your clients cannot do it. But then I want you, from a fitness professional's perspective, tell me why you think your clients aren't exercising on a regular basis. Now, ladies, those answers were totally different from each other. What I think is the reason you don't exercise and what you think is the reason you don't exercise are totally different. And I found that to be a very, very interesting component, right? So I'm not here to dissect what that was about, but when people give reasons why, do you find that there are other underlying reasons that they say, this is my surface reason, but really it is this?
Absolutely. And really, it is this often lends to things that we often don't have a lot of awareness around. So just that little perspective shift that you were doing where you can see something that your client can't see. Sometimes I think we're like, like two rock climbers and you're the instructor that's on the rock and you can see a foothold that your client can't see, right? Because they're so close to the rock. And part of our job is to help them see those footholds. Some of those footholds may be looking at how their thinking patterns are inflexible. We all have rules that we don't even know that we follow. Rules like I have to be in certain clothes to exercise, or I have to be in shape to exercise, or I have to exercise for a certain amount of time, or I have to do 12 reps. So if I don't have time to do 12, I'm not doing it. All these, 45 minutes of this, and some of them we learned when we were like, 15, they're outdated, right? As, exercise changes. So rules can get in the way. Certainly our belief systems about who we are and who we are not. I'm not an athlete. I'm not a runner. I am I'm not a yoga person, all these belief systems that are getting in the way about who we are, our identity. We don't have perspective or flexibility around that. And then oftentimes one of the biggest reasons for folks around why they're not engaging in their movement is they haven't connected to their deeper why, their true values of what may open up in their life if they are moving their bodies. I move my body so that I can be more present with my clients, and that's really important to me. Or I move my body in the morning. I go, out early before my kids are up so that I can be a better mom. That's really important to me. And when I bring that up close, then I'm more willing to face the discomfort of like waking up early to go get this thing done, or carving out time in my middle of my day, or walking, during my lunch so that I can be more present with my clients. So we have to help people get those footholds. And part of that is having, a little bit of a step back view at the deeper reasons why people aren't moving.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. I want to go to Katy. I want to ask you a question, because it goes to one of the things I said when I was on the airplane, right? Where somebody says, I know I should exercise. And I said, why? You should, but why? Why should you? It's pretty powerful, the reasons why you should exercise. But did you get feedback for some of those reasons? And, outside of just, yes, here's what the data says, is what the science says that shows that exercise is good for you. Are people echoing that? Are people that are saying, I know I should exercise, saying, I know I should exercise because it is good for something?
Well, I do think that as personal trainers, we tend to be really attracted to exercise being physically good for us, so you could say that exercise, like science shows that exercise is good for your bones, it's good for your muscles, it's good for longevity, it's good for fall prevention, for metabolic management, right? It's all these clinical reasons. And I do think that resonates with a certain population, and it resonates often with people who go into teaching movement. But then there's a whole bunch of other people for whom, general health as the goal doesn't resonate. There are ways, like movement can be meaningful if it facilitates something else that you that aligns to your value system. So like, as Diana was saying, if you want to show up as a more calm parent, right? If you want to show up as a more or a grandparent who wants to facilitate things with younger children, or if you really value productivity at work and you find that when you exercise earlier in the day, or if you exercise regularly, you're able to focus better, or maybe you value mental health or calmness, and you have just realized that I feel better just throughout all interactions. My anxiety is down, if I get in a bout of movement. So what we found was many people don't actually value health statistics. They value the experiences that being in a body that feels better allows them to do. So I always, like you, I would just have people identify their movement why, and very few movement whys are lower blood pressure.
Right.
They value, feeling like I can join my family on a vacation. I can take this trip to Europe with the rest of my family and be able to walk 7 to 10 slow miles because I get to be with the people that I love, rather than valuing muscle endurance or cardiovascular endurance, full stop. So it's just to be able to connect people to why they want to be able to use their body is much better. It's motivation that actually lasts a lot longer. And it's a type of motivation that isn't easily derailed when you have something like, injury or divorce or, global crises that can knock us off of our commitment, because you're like, oh, I don't have to value my blood pressure as much, but I still want to be with these people. So you're a lot more likely to just, again, stay motivated and stay committed, to be able to take committed action.
So the other thing about this,
go ahead. Yes,
I was going to say something about the statistics is that sometimes statistics can have negative iatrogenic effects, which means actually telling your client the statistics around exercise may make them feel more shame, more negative about themselves. Why can't I just get myself to do this? Kelly McGonigal talks about this classic research study where they had smokers hold cigarette packages that said on them, warning, smoking causes health defects, birth defects and all these health problems. And if you're a smoker and you're holding a package of cigarettes and you are starting to worry about your health, what do you think you're going to do? You're going to grab the cigarette and take a nice long, smoke. So if we think about this, what if those cigarette packages said on them, guess what? You're feeling stressed. You picked up your pack of cigarettes, go outside and take a long breath, go hang out with some friends. That's what smoking gives to you. That's a self-compassionate practice that probably would have a much bigger impact than telling someone warning cigarettes are bad for you. So we can think about that in terms of exercise motivation. What motivates us to move our bodies is actually self-compassion, not self-beration, and not telling people statistics that they already know. Everybody knows that exercise is good for them. If we knew that exercise were good for us and that was the solution, then more than a quarter of us would be meeting the guidelines to exercise.
Yeah.
So self-compassion, seeing it as the kindest thing you can do for yourself and for others, the flow of compassion, you taking care of your body. How does it impact your family? How does it impact your second bodies in your life? How does it impact your dog when you take your dog for a walk? Do you care about that? And when we start to look at it that way, then we have what Katy was talking about, that intrinsic drive that comes and wells up from inside of us that I want to go. Like, I want to go because it matters to me, not because I should go and not because it's good for me in the statistical way.
I love that. First of all, I love Kelly McGonigal. I think she's brilliant. She's the author of The Joy of Movement, which my friend Darlene Marshall had told me about years ago. So I read that. And just to give you guys a little pat on the back, this is a quote that she said about your book. She said, "Brilliant. I love it. Every chapter offers strategies that can help you today with the body you have and the challenges you face. It is the most insightful guide to getting moving I've ever read," which is impressive because she wrote the book called The Joy of Movement. So
Mhm.
she's a wonderful, very insightful person, and to get some accolades like that from her is very impressive. So congratulations for that and for this book. I think that you are absolutely right that it's not that something is good for you. And if that were the case, then everybody would do it.
Mhm.
And sometimes people use this phrase that things can be simple but not easy. And I think that a lot of times exercise falls in that. I'm not asking you to do a complex series of movements. I'm asking you to do something very simple. Doesn't mean that that's easy. How do you balance out this idea, this concept that I'm not asking for complexity in your movement? Um, I want it to be as simple as possible to meet you where you are. But how do you make that easier to do?
Well, in the book, Diana has individuals come up with maybe their three top values as they relate to movement. And then I have them come up with three simple movements that they can connect to those values. Because I do think there's research that if someone can just have like 1 to 3 simple exercises to do daily. So it's just like, breaking down any complex move into smaller pieces. So what is it for you that you feel like is accessible for you to be able to do, whether it's, in your own body, like you feel like it's something you physically can do, or within your schedule, within the domains of your life. Like there's as little resistance to these particular movements as possible. So if you can identify 1 to 2 or help your client identify 1 to 2, what's one stretch you could do every day? Where can you take a 5-minute walk? Because a lot of times inertia is our biggest issue. That's why it feels hard, is to simply change your state. You have to put so much more energy into getting started than you do into maintaining that momentum once you're going. So if you pick something easy, like, oh, you just have to do something for 2 minutes, you've reduced a lot of the friction to getting those 2 minutes started. And then once someone has done it, then they actually feel like, oh, this actually feels good. And they're much more likely to start. So instead of saying, come in for 45 minutes, it's like, oh, just do something for 2 minutes. I do this with my own teenagers all the time. Like, oh, I know cleaning your room is hard, but if you just pick up 3 things, I'm fine with that. And then once they pick up the 3 things, then they're much more likely to be like, oh, I like the way my room looks a little less cluttered. And I think that people really respond to that when it comes to movement too. Just don't make it so big at first.
Yeah, I do love that. I would tell people for the longest time, as a trainer, and they would say, "What should I do when the days I'm not with you?" I said, "What are you currently doing?" They're saying nothing, and I was like, "All right, so identify this. What is your favorite exercise?" And let's say it's bench press, right? So they say, "Oh, bench press." I said, "Then just come to the gym and do 1 set of bench press." And they're like, "What is that going to do?" And I was like, "I don't know, get you to the gym, right?" So the whole point is that if you do 1 set of an exercise you already enjoy doing, then you might do a second or a third. And then while you're there, you're like, well, I might as well get on the treadmill since I'm here. Because the hardest part, as Todd Durkin said when he was on the podcast a few weeks ago, he said the heaviest weight to lift at the gym is the front door. And I think that holds true for everybody, and for many people trying to make this jump from not movement to movement. But I also love what you're also saying, because I'm in a gym culture, and I own gyms.
Mhm.
I train at gyms, and most of the people here too. So it's hard for me sometimes to speak towards this without speaking about the gym. When I was going through school, everything had to change, right? Where it was like, hey, we have to get people moving. And that's vital to the cause, right? Not going to the gym. The gym isn't the answer. The answer is the exercises that get done, and they can be done anywhere. Do you find that people will prioritize this concept of, well, if I cannot make it to the gym, then I just can't do anything. And do you have solutions and ideas that help people go, all right, well, if you don't have a gym, then you have ...
Well, I'll just talk to that, and then Diana, I'll talk to the containers. So Diana really talks a lot about becoming more psychologically flexible, and this is a really big one. We have compartmentalized movement that counts towards exercise as something that has to happen within an exercise container, sometimes literally, right? The actual gym or the gym clothes or the protocol for exercise. But we come from, humans have been taking pretty good care of their bodies for a long time, no gym required. And this isn't anything against gym culture as we've become more sedentary as a culture. We've seen sort of the evolution of a container to make sure it's like supplements and vitamins. If you've kind of fallen off nutritious food abound, then you have to start going to a place where it's really clearly laid out. This is vitamin K and E and D, and the exercise is like, instead of a movement rich life, like here's where you move your arms and here's where you move your legs. And it can be an effective tool, but it can also be disabling for a lot of people if they have any sort of resistance, just even through not being in the culture of that space. It can be quite scary because it's foreign. Also, movement professionals, we're often at work. We're just going to work. The fact that we can lay down some movement at work, that doesn't work for really any other occupation unless someone tells you, oh, you work physically, or you want to add some movement into your occupation. Here's where you can get a little bit more movement. So breaking down, becoming more psychologically flexible around lots of movement counts, no matter where it's happening, allows people to fit more movement minutes into their day. And then Diana, you can, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can think about what this looks like. If you are a personal trainer and you're working with someone on farmers carries, across the room, next time they are at the airport, they have a great opportunity to do some farmer carries. Pick up your luggage, pick up your groceries, pick up your kids' sports equipment. And when you start viewing it through that mindset, then you actually start seeing what you're doing at the gym is preparing you for just the life of being a moving human body, right? At the grocery store, Katy has great tips around, when we open our book around why aren't you parking further away from the store, and all the, like, maybe you just don't like walking in a gross parking lot, right? So there's ways in which we need to do this mental flexibility and this mental shift around movement is some kind of separate thing that we do in some separate space, as opposed to it's integrated into our whole life. Katy's standing right now. I'm sitting on the floor. As I'm sitting on the floor, I'm in a lot of positions that I may be in a yoga class. I'm sitting cross-legged. I just moved into another position where one knee is up, one knee is down. And all of a sudden I'm doing my yoga while I'm on a podcast with NASM, right? So it's like it's a different way we want our clients to think about movement. And part of that is also identifying that when they are in the gym with you, their motivation is super high. They're on a motivation wave. BJ Fogg talks about motivations going up and down.
Love him.
They're in the gym with you. They're driving on your energy of like, this is like where we exercise. But that motivation wave is going to go way down when it's Monday morning at 8 a.m. and they want to sleep, or their schedule has just blown up, right? And we need to figure out ways they can bring movement into their Monday morning when it's chaotic, that may not be getting to the gym, but they can still do that little mini farmer's carry when they go to the grocery store and they pick up all their stuff, right? And that's part of the psychological flexibility. You identify the value, you simplify the action, you reinforce the heck out of yourself for doing it, and you do a lot of self-compassion. It's hard to move in a sedentary world and a busy life, and you still act on it even when your motivation is low.
I love that.
And I just want to say, as a personal trainer, one thing you can do to support that is, with every movement that you're doing, give, even if it's just a verbal explanation of where this can show up, where they can practice this exact same move in their 9 to 5 or to the other domains of their life. Like, that really goes a long way. If you can give some context, like you're doing this in the gym right now, but this sort of move, if next time, instead of getting the cart and pushing it, get that side bag, and I want you to practice holding your loaded basket at 90 degrees and 40. Just watch what you're doing with your arm. You can do a curl in that situation. Your client will remember that. And then now you're more than just someone who's instructing within the context of that 1 hour. You are sort of their movement through life instructor as well.
Okay.
Part of that, you're going to be embarrassed. Yeah.
Go.
I was saying, and part of that is you're going to look different. We also highlight Pilar Gerasimo's work on being a healthy deviant. You will be the bizarro as I am at the airport that's doing yoga in the corner, right? You are going to look different, but in order to be healthy in a world that is very unhealthy, well, in a Western culture that's very unhealthy around movement and diet, you need to be that deviant that is doing the bicep curls with your shopping basket. And once you just surrender to that, that's psychological flexibility, and you will find that other people will follow. And then you'll find your people. Like, they're the people at the back of the meeting room that are standing and stretching, and you're like, oh, you're my people. I'm going to go stand by you. And you have this little bond, a little bit of a rebel in our movement culture.
I do like that. Ladies, give me just 1 second. I'm going to do a little commercial, and then we'll be right back. This episode of the NASM-CPT Podcast is brought to you by NASM One, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program clients. Enjoy half off all certifications and specializations, access to free CEUs, and more. All of this for just $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM One. Okay, so one of the things that I think is really important is movement, right? So we're talking about physical activity. Can we move? And then we're taking the word sometimes exercise off the table. Kind of like when somebody was like, well, if I'm only going to do one set of bench press because that's the one exercise that I don't hate, then what's the point? So I think clarity around our exercise mindset here for personal trainers and our non-exercise, thermogenics, right? So what do we do throughout the day? Sometimes we are thinking, well, is that enough? So what do we know about that non-exercise activity and what that does for us, and what are the benefits of it? And I know we're not talking about calories burned. We're not talking about, are you getting ready to do high rocks or CrossFit? That's not the point of that. But what are some of these other benefits that go along with, yes, I'm increasing my daily activity. What does that do for me?
Yes, I do think exercise is often hijacked by high performance, because our perspective of movement is really heavily informed by athletics. Like, when I was an undergraduate, I remember having a textbook that said there are 3 types of human movement: fitness, athletics, and dance, which is, of course, kind of a really bizarre thing to say, to even put it down.
I agree.
When so much of human movement is not those things. I mean, I think what's happened, again, we live in a movement drought now in this particular culture. We're movement starved. And so we're trying, and people really can't figure out where it even fits in the course of a day. So our perspective is, how do we optimize 30 minutes or 45 minutes? So we're not even really asking the right question to begin with. Like, we're not even really clear what exercise is. Exercise is a small subcategory of physical activity, and physical activity itself is a subcategory of human movement. There are things that don't meet the clinical definition of physical activity, nor the definition of clinical exercise, that are still things that we need to do all the time. The population that physical activity as like a practice benefits most are the people who aren't doing it at all.
Amen.
So we don't even need to talk about performance or athletics yet. It's simply being able to change your position with more regularity, high volume, low intensity type movements. So, right. So that's why it's like, just stand up and walk around for 2 minutes every 30 minutes, because that really has a high health benefit. We're trying to decrease people's cardiovascular disease, try to preserve muscle mass, mental health, right? Just to even clear your head, just to nourish your body with a little beneficial circulation does not take what we are often training for when it comes to athletics or high performance or even high fitness. So it's just, can you break up your geometry? I'm a biomechanist, so I think in terms of shapes and levers quite a bit. So I have people really look at, if you plotted your main joints, in your body, if you put a star there, or put a star at your ankle and your knee and your hip, and your shoulders and your neck and your head and your elbows and your wrists, what constellation are you making? And what's the volume in a day at which you're making this one constellation? I just want you to be breaking up your constellation. I'm not even talking about thermogenics, not to say that it's not happening, but there's so much narrative too around exercise as being purely something you do to offset the energy that you're intaking. And there's a benefit to understanding thermogenics and like the way we have to fuel our body. And we also have to fuel our body with movement. Like, movement isn't to offset what you're putting in your mouth. Movement is another way of energizing your body. It's a way of distributing nutrients. Like, even what you put in your mouth isn't distributed without you moving around. So there's tremendous just health and general wellness benefits to this simple moving more throughout the day without it necessarily being peak intensity or higher intensity for a longer duration. That is also something I think of a movement diet. We need in our movement diet some of these peak movements, but it's like a dietary pyramid. The peak stuff that we're getting at the gym is often the tip, but there's a whole base that we're not getting. That is just that simple baseline movement that is really accessible. You're not going to sweat, so you don't necessarily need to change your outfit. It fits in. Sometimes at work, it fits in with your kids and your family time. It fits in many other domains of life, transportation, but it doesn't have to be peak, which often exercise gets enveloped around that peak intensity.
I also think there's something, if I look at my movement diet across my week, I go to a gym, I go to a group fitness class. Part of the reason why I go to that is to get stronger. Part of the reason why I go to that is because my really close friend is a fitness instructor and there's no other person I want to spend. And that's really how I get to spend time with her. Mm-hmm. Part of that is the group, the energy of the group first thing in the morning, how it changes my whole mindset throughout the rest of the day. Part of that is because I'm developing competence. It's really, humans have a core need to just get better at stuff like that. It's actually part of our core yearnings, part of our self-actualization. And we can do that in the gym. Part of that is I'm not stretching myself physically a whole lot anymore in other areas. I'm not learning a new sport like I did when I was a teen. And this is a great way to stretch myself. So we also want to get more like a bigger, broader perspective on what something like the gym offers me. But then if you look at your movement diet, there's other ways in which I'm moving too. I'm working in the garden. I'm walking my dog. I'm walking with clients. I'm doing yoga on the floor in my bedroom before bed at night. I mean, all these different ways in which I'm stretching in the kitchen. I'll grab a hold of a counter and stretch my back. I'm whipping my own cream. There's lots of ways in which we move. And all of that is contributing to our well-being. Sometimes we can't always put our finger on it, but we get so, we just want to put everything in little tiny boxes and we don't see how, as Katy was saying, she's a systems thinker. Well, I'm a systems thinker in terms of psychology, our whole huge psychological system that gets impacted through movement in our life. And the gym is part of it, but it's not just about, I have a history of anorexia and bulimia. And one of the things that I have worked really hard to do is get away from movement as calorie burning. I had to actually retrain my whole mindset around that, because it used to be I'd get on a Stairmaster and I'd try and get to a certain number on that Stairmaster. And then that number had to equal out in some weird equation in my brain around how much I ate that day. That is a restrictive, rigid reason to move your body. And a much more expansive systems-based reason to move your body is because, wow, it makes me feel energized. It helps me give back to the world in a certain way. I'm more connected. And maybe I have a little bit more life force because of it that then I can use in good ways. That's a lot better than a number on a Stairmaster.
I agree. I'm not a big fan of doing exercise as a punishment or as retaliation to things that you've done with your body. Also, I want to point out I created a course a few years ago called the Type 2 Diabetes Fitness Specialist course because I have diabetes. And so one of the things that was important is I wanted to try to identify some of the important factors that go along with being diabetic. And one of the more significant factors was sedentary lifestyles. And some of the research that came up was shocking because it never crossed my mind that you could be a regular exerciser and be sedentary. I thought, well, you did your 30 minutes of exercise and now you got to be careful. You can't just sit the other 23 and a half hours a day. And the research is very, very clear that even if you exercise high intensity, no matter what it is, there are different, maybe they assume different mechanisms that take place because yes, that is benefiting you to do the exercise, but it might be a different mechanism that just says, well, if you're going to sit for the rest of the day, you're going to recline for the rest of the day, then that is incredibly dangerous, not just bad for you. It is dangerous for your body, for your health. And I was like, I don't know, y'all. When I first heard that, I was like, wait a second. I never even thought about that. It never crossed my mind. And I was shocked.
Yeah, we definitely have an exercise as something that you check off rather than looking at exercise. Exercise, I want to change it. It's not exercise, it's a movement. Movement really needs to be distributed throughout the day in the same way that food is distributed throughout the day. And there's energetic reasons for that. You know, like as you're taking food in, movement is part of we can't make a whole episode on just that, but you've got blood sugar and then you've got glycogen storage and the way that you're choosing to use your muscles and, your body as a whole is a big part of what's happening on that level. And so when you have something like type 1 diabetes, I think you're more acutely aware of those numbers as they fluctuate throughout the day, blood sugar wise. But even if you have type 2 diabetes, you eventually become really concerned with, I have a big dose of, I just ate, there's like a big dose of blood sugar here. And this idea of uptaking it throughout the day versus when I say this culture is sedentary, I'm talking about the culture as a whole, and I'm usually including exercisers because 35 to 60 minutes of movement swathed by stillness the rest of the time. When we look at, I would say, much more active populations of humans on the world right now, we are in the sedentary box. Now we're going for peak because we're trying to expend a larger amount or volume of energy in that short period of time, but you're still sitting around the rest of the time. We're actively sedentary for the exercisers, but yeah, I wrote a book, Move Your DNA, trying to tease that out. Like, here's how movement works on the cellular level. And even many exercisers are quite sedentary, and the exercises that they do tend to be the modes that they're most drawn to. And so we're also not distributing that movement through our bodies very well. We tend to do the same repetitious movements when we are moving for our small amounts, so that when you have a broader understanding of a movement diet and how you need to distribute the movement well throughout the body as well as throughout the day, then psychological flexibility really helps, because you're like, well, I need so much movement, some higher intensity, much more lower, higher volume, but lower intensity. Then you can see, like, it really does matter what I do with my body when I'm watching TV at the end of the day. I can fit some movement in right here. It's not the peak movement, but my volume is so high, I can get some of this low intensity mobilizing movement right here. Or I can choose to walk for 6 minutes instead of sit in the car waiting to pick up a kid. Like it's a lot easier to address the high volume, low intensity movement we're missing in the context of everyday living. Once you can open up your mind and see all the places that movement actually fits.
And if you're working with a client, you could get them more psychologically flexible around this by using a really simple metaphor. I use this all the time with my clients, where we're in a room, we got a couch, we got a carpet. And I say, if you were to, for the next 10 years, leave this couch on this carpet and say, now you got to go move to a new home, and you lift up the couch, what would you see? Versus if for the next 10 years, every hour you lifted up this couch and you moved it an inch in a different direction every hour, what would you see in 10 years when you lifted up that couch? That is the benefit of movement throughout your day. So if you are moving your body throughout your day, you're distributing your energy, as Katy's talking about, all those constellations that we can make with our body. Even in this interview, Katy's shifting her weight because she's standing. I'm shifting my position because I'm sitting, and I'm using my own body to hold me up instead of using a chair to lean back on. Then my body is in a very different place over the course of that hour from just having some of that movement. But we have to get psychologically flexible. We actually have to break up some of the rules and beliefs that we have, that we were taught in gym class, or that we were taught by a personal trainer about moving our bodies. And as personal trainers, that's part of you to lead that way, because this is actually the future of movement and movement psychology. Is we're moving in that direction, folks. No longer is it enough to say 30 minutes, 5 days a week of aerobic exercise. Hopefully you're, out of that bind and starting to think about movement in our real lives, as well as doing the more focused movement in the gym that supports that movement in your real life. So it's helping your clients make that switch is something that you can do. And it's super motivating to them, because now they're starting to look at their movement differently as well. They have a little more agency around it, and a little bit like, oh, it's too hard, I can't get to the gym. Well, great. I can't always get to the gym either. But some of the things that we're working on here, you can use right at home, in your day. And we're doing the training so that you can take it into your life.
Oh, I feel like you guys fall so in line with our certified wellness coaching course. And I wish that you get an opportunity to meet Darlene Marshall, who does our podcast. That's kind of the wellness coaching podcast. It tees up. It falls such in line with what you do and what your focus is. And as I'm reading and studying that course right now, and then talking to you, both of you, I'm just thinking this is the perfect symbiotic relationship with, wellness coaching, and not just personal training. It's a different idea. It's a different way to address what it is that we're looking to do to create wellness in our lives. So with that, I want to say, is there anything that you can leave with? And I want you both just give us a little, you're going to leave our audience with a little tidbit of information. So Katy, we'll start with you, and then Diana, and then plug your website and your book and all the things before we pass it on to the other.
Well, I think what I just wanted to say is sort of teed up. Has been a long separation between wellness and fitness and performance, right? You need to know different things in order to get someone to a higher performance state. Like, you have to know techniques about progression, et cetera. And then there's, I don't even want to call it like softer, but there's just like a broader way of approaching general wellness. But what I really like is the fusion of the two, because I think that people fade out of being able to push for performance because they have not built a wellness understanding base. There's a lot to being able to go longer in your life. I am a master's rower and can row competitively with people who are in their 70s and 80s. But the people who aren't able to do that don't really have a strong outside of their performance base. And on the opposite side of that, I think that For some people, wellness is an easier portal to get into movement. But I think once you can master wellness and you get an understanding, there's a lot of people who can unlock their desire for greater performance. They didn't even see themselves as someone who can perform physically. So I like the full pyramid of both. I think we could all push towards more performance, and whatever that means to you. It doesn't have to be competitive. It just means getting more physically out of your body. No matter where you're starting, you might have to get more out of your body by expanding at the base, or you might have a good base and you get more out of your body by pushing towards the peak.
Thank you. I
And
appreciate that. All right, Tam.
I would add that I think that the key to overcoming resistance to movement is psychological flexibility and wiser use of your effort. So our work is to help our clients become more psychologically flexible so that they can do the things that they deep down in their heart want to do in their life. But for us as providers, we have to get psychologically flexible first. And I would highly recommend that you take this book and you work through it for yourself. I Know I Should Exercise, but is so much more than just about exercise. It's about how we relate to the world. You could put in any STEM statement to that. I know I should X, but I know I should be a better parent, but I know I shouldn't be mad at my spouse, but. And when you start to see psychological flexibility as a way of approaching all sorts of things, then now you have a skill set that will help you with your exercise, but it'll help you with life too. And isn't that the case that movement helps us with life too, not just with, the physicality of it? It helps us with all sorts of mindset shifts that we have around the world. So work on psychological flexibility for yourself, and then you'll be able to help your clients become more psychologically flexible too, and get moving in the ways that they want to and they long to.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you being here. And I just want to say to both Katy and Diana, I appreciate the work that you put into this book and the content that is there. And I'm going to encourage the audience to, if you get an opportunity, take a chance and get the book and read it. So with that being said, thank you for being here. And I also want to thank all of you for being present and listening to this entire podcast. So thank you. I know when I have guests, it tends to go a little bit longer and we get to chatting versus me just talking and then it's over in 15, 20 minutes. But there are people that have something to say and man, I want to hear it and I appreciate it. So with that being said, thank you for spending your time with us. Like, subscribe, share with your fitness friends and family, and leave a review. If you want to reach out to me, you can do so. Hit me up on Instagram at dr.rickrichey or email me rick.richey@nasm.org. Y'all keep inspiring people to fitness. Thanks for listening. This has been the NASM CPT Podcast.